Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki Campo. I'm a program manager at Innovation Guelph. Welcome to the absolute first Toolkit Tuesday since COVID took over the world by storm. So we have brought it back. Unfortunately, I do not have pizza for all of you, as I would have had we been in the space. But definitely, if you have your lunch with you, go ahead and eat it. That is what Lunch and Learns are all about, right? Community and being together and learning something when we're brought together over lunch. So I encourage you to go ahead and eat your lunch and enjoy the session as you do. Today's session is a must-attend introduction for internet security for your business, and it is presented by Henrique Reis of Reis Informatica. And I'm going to, without further ado, hand things off to Enrique so that he can begin his presentation and discussion. We'll get through his presentation in about an hour and then stick around for about a half-hour Q&A. So as people come on, just to let you know that extra half hour at the end, feel free to stick around and ask your questions, and we can go from there. So welcome, everybody. And Enrique, over to you. We'll let you share your screen and get your presentation started. Thanks so much for joining us today, everybody.
Good. Thanks, Mickey. And thank you, everybody, for joining in. I hope this little presentation will be useful for you. I will be trying to bring you up to speed on some of the recent developments of cybersecurity, what we see out in the field, and talk a little bit about how you can protect yourselves and try to keep yourselves and your families as safe as possible. Our company, Reis Informatica, we provide cybersecurity solutions for clients. So this is drawing on a lot of our experience and what we see day to day in helping clients out. And I hope it's a benefit to you. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right. Can you all see that?
Yep, we're all good.
Excellent. Great. All right. So threats and solutions, introduction to internet security for your business. So what we'll be talking about is this: cybersecurity challenges and how these problems affect your business. Some of the legal ramifications of a data breach. So you never want to get into it, but I'll let you know kind of the things that may happen. Traditional protection and why companies need a new approach. Cyber attack cases in the real world and how they could have been avoided, and maybe some things you can learn from them. It's always good to look back on things that have happened and do a post-mortem, and it's better that it didn't happen to you. You can learn from other people's mistakes. Prevalent cyber attacks and how to protect yourself from these types of attacks. How you can start to protect your own business, how we can help, and a little thing at the end there. Okay, whoops. So just an intro on me. So I'm the founder of Reis Informatica. I was formerly trained as an electronics engineering technologist from Conestoga College. In that course, we had a lot of great training in IT before IT was actually a thing, which is really interesting. But it was a great foundation for IT in general. From there, there was no electronics jobs. So I switched to my other love, which was IT, or computing in general. And I began a career in Mississauga for a company out of there, servicing clients all over southwestern Ontario. I would drive from here to Mississauga and drive from there all over southwestern Ontario. It was a lot of fun there. After a while, I went to other IT companies and then decided to start one on my own in 2001 with a business partner. And then in 2008, I went on my own and started Reis Information Systems. And we just recently went through a name change. So we're no longer Reis Information Systems. We are Reis Informatica. And the reason why for that is, it's shorter to write, because information systems is a long thing to write. And B, it's to tie all of our companies together that we have around the world. So we have offices in Lisbon, Portugal, here in Kitchener in Southwest Ontario, and in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So that's how we support our clients with follow the sun approach. So it's just the name changes to unify everything and keep things simple. Areas of expertise in my technical expertise that I have is operating systems. So I was always very good into many different types of operating systems, and Linux, Windows, and Mac, and other funny things you've never heard of before. Enterprise network infrastructure, so switching, routing, things like that, and just moving packets of information from point A to point B in the most efficient and most resilient way, and obviously cybersecurity. So I was a white hat hacker for a bunch of years, where I was paid by the CEO under contract to break into their corporations and then teach them how to protect themselves. So while I was doing that, that was a heck of a lot of fun. I had a great time. But nowadays, I don't do that anymore. I've got other people who can do it for us. All right. So onward. I want to show you this little graphic about the global risks report from the World Economic Forum, and how cybersecurity has become a huge risk out there, and all the types of risks that are possible. You know, from climate change, action failure, food crisis. You can see I hope you can see that. It's a little blurry on my screen. Hopefully it's not too bad on yours. But cybersecurity is a challenge in that it's highly complex. It's very high demand now because of what's been going on. There's a lot of bad actors out there that are just after your information, your data, your ID, your money. So the amount of actors that are out there is increasing all the time, and they're getting much more sophisticated. And because they're growing, and there's becoming a huge shortage of cybersecurity talent. So to do this on your own, it's getting harder and harder and harder. The salaries for cybersecurity people are getting higher and higher because they're more in demand. So the risk is getting higher on the threat landscape. I'll talk a little about some of the world's biggest data breaches, so you can kind of get an idea. You keep hearing it about all the time, that how there is, like, for example, one of the big bubbles in here is Marriott hotels, and 383 million people's names were stolen, or their information was breached. Facebook, there's just a ton of them out there. So I want to talk about some of those things, but what is the impacts to business that these breaches can cause you? If you were to be breached in a cybersecurity attack, there's a lot of things that can happen to you. First of all, the financial loss, the cost to respond to such an attack, lost productivity, the lost revenue, decrease of your company's valuation if you're a highly valued company. A breach can really impact that. I'll give you one example. I'm not going to name names, and I'm not going to try to point where they are. Let's just say it did happen, because it was a real life thing that happened. There was a company that called us, and they had a massive breach. We went in there, and they knew that their systems were being used by hackers to mine Bitcoin, sorry. And they knew this. They didn't know how to get it out of there, but they knew this was happening. So they finally said, we got to get this out of there. So they went and tried to get it out. As soon as they did try to get it out, what happened was the hacker detected that and immediately launched a CryptoLocker virus in the entire network. This was a substantial network. It was 100 computers, 100 PCs, so 100 staff were working away, and all of a sudden, all their computers were locked up with CryptoLocker viruses, and 20 servers that they had. And this is not a small company, you know, and they got hit really hard with this attack. And not only did it destroy their servers, but it also destroyed their backups. So the entire company was, you know, just completely stopped. They couldn't do a thing anymore. They couldn't process. They couldn't do what they normally do. The only thing that saved them was that the administrator took their data backups off site for the first time in a long time. It was a brand new administrator that came and started working for them a little while ago. So that was the very first, that little thing that they did there did save them. However, they were down for a month. They survived, but they were down for a month. They couldn't do any work for 1 month. So it's like, you know, they had their own mini COVID episode where they couldn't even do any kind of work. But just to give you an understanding that it took us many, many hours to get them up and running again, and a $50,000 bill just to get them up. And they're, you know, not even to mention what they couldn't do any kind of any revenue generation or anything like that. So their business was ground to a halt. So just to kind of give you an idea of the financial losses that can happen. If you have any kind of compliance issues or compliancy that you have, like for example, the medical industry, there's some compliance that they have to adhere to. You could get hit with fines or other regulator actions. A damage to your reputation, right? That's a big one. So if you get hit and you know you're down, there's trust that could be lost, you know, between you and your business partners or clients and things like that. Customer confidence could be impacted. Your brand image, you know, could be tarnished. Legal liability, you could face some lawsuits. You know, if something happened, for example, where your systems got breached and it impacted another company where they had, let's say, money stolen out of their accounts due to something that happened on your system. Well, they could turn around and sue you or you know, work through their insurance company to work, you know, try to recoup some losses that way. So there's, I'm no lawyer, obviously, but you know, I've seen some things like this happen, mostly in the States, but I've seen some of these things happen here too nowadays. So you need to prove that you're not complicit in these attacks that started from your own hacked systems. So you have to really, you know, be careful there. Business continuity, that little story I mentioned, you know, these folks were fortunate. They had a bit of a war chest already, but one big attack like this could knock your company right off, like could just take it right out. You could lose a ton of things, like your intellectual property, you know, your reputation, or whatever it takes. You could lose the company. Not only that, but as business owners, we're already under stress enough and high stress enough, just dealing with day-to-day stuff. Now you imagine getting hit with something like this, the psychological impact of these things happening to you. And when you're in the middle of this sort of crisis, you know, you're looking down this long road of nothing but problems, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And that can leave you, you know, all sorts of emotions like shame or depression or being embarrassed and just, you know, confused in general. So it's for business, it can be costly in all sorts of ways. When I talk about compliance, here in Canada, we have the PIPEDA laws. And now, if you do get breached, you are required to report to the government any breaches of security safeguards involving personal information that pose a real risk and significant harm to individuals. So if you do get breached and you do hold private information for private people and things like that, you need to make people aware of what has happened. And you've seen it for example, I think it was Life Labs was the last one I've seen. And if you ever had a test done for medical testing done, you would have probably went to Life Labs. Well, they had to send out a letter to everybody that was at Life Labs, and they did it right. They did a good job, I think, anyway. Where they also paid for 5 years of ID or credit watch protection. So to help you, try to get over that. Now, but they had to make everybody aware of it, so they couldn't hide it or sweep it under the rug like they used to be able to here in Canada. Now they have to actually disclose that. So your organization, if you hold in private information of private individuals, you may have to do something like that. So dealing with malware nowadays. So viruses and malware and all sorts of things is one vector of attack. And this today of all days is actually an interesting thing. And I'm gonna discuss this a little bit. Something interesting happened today I'm gonna make you very aware of. So generally, viruses are, what I kind of call weapons of mass destruction, because they kind of blanket a lot of different things. So most viruses are designed to cause massive damage to as many companies and computers as possible. So antivirus companies will create signatures that detect patterns of these viruses. And this is traditional antivirus, right? So a virus will come out, antivirus company will find these viruses, look at the actual coding, and create a signature that they'll use to detect these viruses. But nowadays, there's a lot of emerging viruses that are custom designed, let's say, custom made. And if your business is being targeted, they might actually write a virus that won't have a signature that an antivirus could detect the pattern. So you can't detect these new viruses that are coming out in traditional ways. So it's not good enough anymore. So just to kind of bring the concept home, the old signature-based antivirus approach, they find a virus, they create a signature for that virus, and they are able to detect that one variant. But if it changes, or if it's custom made, they're not going to be able to detect it. Next generation antivirus systems do it in a little different way. They use behaviors on your computer. So it's more, instead of detecting a signature, like a pattern match, they kind of look at your computer and say, hey, what's your computer doing? Hey, what are you doing? Like, do you normally do that? It's kind of like the inside conversation inside the computer. Do you normally do such a thing to let's say, modify this file or encrypt this file? That's not normal. What are you doing? So it asks a bunch of questions internally, right? But hackers will use all sorts of different types of entry points, and to try to deliver their malware into your system, right? So it's very important to not only have a very good antivirus system, but one that can try to detect the different vectors or different methods of trying to get in to your system, right? Known threats or unknown threats, or malware that can evolve, which is really scary stuff. And then, how do they communicate back to the outside world? So there's all sorts of ways viruses can get into your system. So nowadays, the general thinking in the security community is, it's not if you're going to get hacked, but when you're going to get hacked. And that's a very scary thing to read and to hear. So I've been to a few security seminars. I go down to the States when I used to be able to go down to the States. And I'll listen to these NSA, National Security Agency folks down in the States, and they will, they talk about the current threat landscape, and they say exactly this. It's not if you're going to get hacked, but it's when you're going to get hacked. So what are you going to do about that, right? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But I want you to think about cybersecurity as an onion, right? And that's exactly how you should think of it. It's not like a throw something at your business and hopefully it's going to stick and protect you. You just can't do one thing. There are many layers to cybersecurity, and this little graphic, it's difficult to show everything, and we wanted to kind of give you a sense of what things, depending on your situation. And I have to stress that your situation may be different. You may not have an email server on site. Generally, most people don't anymore. Or you may not have web servers on site, but the general idea is in there. So when we look at protecting companies, we really look at it in different layers, right? So we look at your core systems, right? Your core being your users, your data, your intellectual property, your finances, your data, like everything that matters to you. You want to protect that with very hardened security, with encryption and ways to be able to detect breaches if it happens. We want to implement, I don't know, where's my mouse here? Right here. You know, behavior monitoring. We want to be able to, you know, check things that pass through. Whoops, what happened here? I'm a PowerPoint newbie, so sorry if this things kind of go away on me. Let's start at the perimeter here, which most people think of, oh, I'll just put a firewall on my network and I'm happy. So they go out to Best Buy and they buy themselves a Linksys firewall and they throw it onto their network, thinking that's going to be good enough. But it's not. I'm here to tell you, those things are just not good enough for your average day business. You really need to have a good, solid firewall that is monitored and backed by a very reputable company. Those home-based, consumer-based firewalls, they're okay for the house, but they're not okay for a business or a growing business. Okay, security changes very fast, and today, like I said, I was going to talk to you about it. Today is a good example of that. So there's a brand new virus or a brand new vulnerability that's out there today that is so scary that if you get it on your system, you can wave goodbye to your computer network if you don't have the proper protections built in, right? Right now, there's a lot of people trying to use that, trying to hack with that. And there's a lot of companies out there trying to develop antivirus systems to try to protect you from that. So you have to stay on top of it. Having a good firewall at the perimeter is a good start, but it's not the only thing you need to do. You need to have ways of protecting your file systems, your web systems, your email. So spam blocking, for example, is a good thing, but not just any kind of spam blocking. I don't know how to do polls on this, but it would be great to know how many people are using Office 365 as opposed to other types of email systems. But if there was a way, if you're using Office 365, you have mechanisms in there to really protect your email in a very good way. I'm very impressed with it. I don't know about the other ones like Gmail or not, but I know that Office 365 has extremely good protections in there, and you should really take advantage of those things. The next layer in is where the antivirus systems come into play, where you know, we try to detect behaviors, vulnerabilities that exist on your workstations and your servers. Inspecting memory, because there's some viruses that don't even touch your hard drive; they run in memory only, right? And so it makes it very hard for traditional antivirus systems to go after and try to detect these things, because they don't exist on the hard drive. So when they go and do a scan of the hard drive, it detects nothing. So that's why you have to have a very good antivirus system that's able to detect things in memory. So yeah, you can see how multiple layers you use multiple layers to try to protect yourself. And this is the same, for any company, like small company or large companies. So I wanted to give you also some real world cases. Two massive data breaches that have happened in the past. I mean, I had tons and tons of them to choose from, but I wanted to kind of give you an example of two of them. So we all heard of Target, American company, and for a little while they were up here in Canada, and they invested lots of money in cybersecurity. They were a target of, well, no pun intended, but it came out. They had a hack which resulted in millions of customers that were affected, millions. And it started after they did their forensics. It started with a phishing attack. And phishing attacks, if you don't know, are those emails that you would get that try to get you to click on a link, and they try to make you do something to basically give them permission to run anything on your computer. And once they can get a foothold in that computer, they can go off and look for other computers to get at. So they had a phishing attack that came in, and it infected by way of a HVAC vendor using their credentials, and it went off and started exploiting the purchase portal, where from there it was able to get all the information out of the point of sale machines that they needed, right? So millions of dollars were spent to contain the virus and to protect their reputation. The crazy thing is that they did have systems that knew about this, that were detecting this. The systems were alerted, but nobody jumped on it. Nobody went in and actually and invoked their incident response policy and went in and tried to kill this problem, which was the craziest thing. And result, their brand was tarnished. Lots of money was spent to control to fix their reputation. The CEO and the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, they were fired. A very, very sad situation. So in this little, I know it's a little busy, but just kind of give you the anatomy of what happened. The attacker came in and phished the third-party contractor on his or her laptop, and from there, they were able to steal the credentials to the access contractor portal of their system, which was then they were able to attack internal file servers. And they found the point of sale machines, put some malware on it, and they scraped, I'll do some funny terms here, they scraped the RAM for clear text, credit card, Stripe data. From that, they went off and found more data. Basically, I don't want to go through it all, but you can see the path that they went in from one little small hole by responding to a phishing email, letting that malware in, and then from there it spread like wildfire, looking for vulnerable systems inside the business. You might have a great virus, but this just a great firewall, but this bypassed the firewall and just wreaked havoc on the internal system. And as a result, you saw the result. Few people got fired, brands were tarnished. The same thing happened with Home Depot. Almost exact same thing, same methods. So we don't have to go through it again, but tons of credit cards are stolen from these folks. So, and these credit cards are actually then sold on the dark web, and people will buy them and then try to use your own credit cards against you, buy things off the credit cards and do fraud by using credit cards and things like that, and it just creates a big headache for everybody. So how can you avoid this? Well, they obviously spent a lot of money, but they had holes, right? And how is a little company, you know, that doesn't have like the multi-million-dollar budgets of these big companies, how do little companies try to protect themselves? There's some basic things that you can do. When you see those Microsoft patches, make sure like that those things are being done all the time, like all the time. You got to make sure that all your computers are updated all the time. The big vulnerability that has been announced today is because that there is a vulnerability inside of Windows. It affects corporate domain controllers. Basically what it means is if you have a company with a lot of computers, they're controlled centrally by what they call domain controllers, one or two or more computers that control the security of the entire corporate network. Well, the vulnerability today, what happens is there's a special method of taking any ordinary user and elevating their privileges to become a domain administrator. Once you've got that, you got keys to the kingdom. So in order for this to happen, the hacker has to have a foothold in your network already. And it's not very easy always to detect footholds. We do have software that is able to detect footholds in corporate networks. But for the average people, you should have a very good antivirus system, at least and maybe run a couple of antiviruses to try to find any footholds there. But patching is probably one of the best things you can do to help protect yourselves. Because if Microsoft comes out with a bunch of security patches, you better put them on your network right away. Also, if you have any Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, even Vista, well, especially Vista, I highly recommend getting rid of those computers if you still have them. Just go to Windows 10 and patch it up very, very well and have a good antivirus on them. What else can you do? Continuous monitoring by humans and machines. So this is where you would subscribe to a service, a security service that would watch your systems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Usually that security service will also run vulnerability scans. There are some vulnerability scans on the web that you could do. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the one I want to share, but if I think of it, I'll bring it up. If you do have point of sale machines, it's a good idea to separate them between your corporate network and your point of sale. In fact, network segregation is a great way to do a lot of things like wireless guest access, making sure your guests have different access than your corporate wireless devices. It's a very good, or even manufacturing, making sure your manufacturing systems are separated from your corporate systems. Because I'll tell you, and I've been in a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturing companies, some of these systems that are out there, for example, I'll just pick an industry, plastic injection molding, or even just CNC machines in general. Some of these machines come with pre-built Windows workstations that have, let's say, a pre-built Windows workstation that controls that machine. And the manufacturer of that machine does not want you to update it, does not want you to work with it, does not want you to touch it, right? It voids the warranty. It might break the computer. You'll put your CNC machine out of a job. Basically, it'll screw it up. Well, if that's the case, then you better segregate those things away from the rest of the network. So you got to be very, very careful of such machines and take some action against. So network segregation is a very good practice to take. Manage vendor credentials. Just don't give everybody an access to your network. You got to be very careful about that. You know, if you might have an alarm company, and You know, the alarm company might want to put a device on your network, for example. It's not the credentials, but you know, they might want to put a device on your network. Be careful who puts what on your network. Or if you have a software vendor, let's say, you know, be careful of just giving them the keys to the kingdom, the domain controller access, and maybe revoke that, or give them a temporary access and revoke that afterwards. If you have point of sale machines, if they have the ability to encrypt their memory, please do so. Have some anti-malware with host intrusion protection systems activated. There are good antivirus systems out there that have such features that look at it to see if your machine is being breached, and it's able to take some evasive action and help protect that particular machine or server. Some of the more advanced things that can be done is using AI and machine learning technology. Very good stuff that's out there nowadays. And also learning from previous cases, such as Target and Life Labs and all these other types of attacks that have happened in the past. So I want to get into a little bit more about some of these more common attacks and how you can protect yourself. So the three big ones are ransomware, phishing, and credential theft. And ransomware hijacks your data through encryption and demands a ransom payment. These things are nasty. That was the first example I told you about. Very nasty stuff. It's the most frustrating things that can happen. A phishing attack is usually where most things start, right? Sending emails that look legitimate, and they try to steal your data or try to get you to install things. You know, so from phishing attacks, they could try to steal your credentials. They can try to sell them on the dark web. We have the ability with certain tools that scrapes the dark web, and we provide this with, you know, as a service for some of our clients, is to, you know, keep watch of the dark web to see if their credentials are stolen. I think there's actually, I actually have a little link for you later on about how you can do that yourself on a, it's a little limited, but it's pretty good. It works very well on how to do that yourself. So I want to talk about phishing emails first. And here's a typical phishing email. And you'll see that we're highlighting a lot of the problems that happen in this, and I'll kind of outline it. You can see this is purported to be coming from Netflix. But if you look at the link, it says Netflix here, but this is obviously not Netflix. This is pause, massage. That's Netflix comes from netflix.com, right? So you'll know right there, that's the first telltale sign of a phishing message. They may or may not have your name here. It's usually hi client or hi sir or ma'am or something really generic because they don't have your name. And you've got to do something within 24 to 48 hours. Like, you just got to do it or you're done, right? So they're trying to invoke a sense of urgency in you that you must, you know, update your CVV or your personal information by clicking on this link here. Now, I'm going to give you another little website that you can go to that's great to test your knowledge on some of this stuff. If you take your mouse and you hover over these links, on the bottom of these messages, you'll see the link pops up, and it better say netflix.com. If it does not, you know that's a phishing attack, right? These things could look so good, like so incredibly good. You have to take you got to look and think before you click on anything. And then think again before you click, right? So take a couple times and think twice before you click on anything in an email. You know, pay attention to all these signals, you know, being too generic, the urgency, the requesting of the personal information, spelling and grammar errors. You'll see that a lot. Like, there's, you know, a lot of people that are doing this the English is not their first language. So they'll have some, you know, things that come out of Google Translate, for example, or they you know, they have somebody on their team that is the best in English, you know, but, you know, it's not very good English in our ways of speaking, but you'll see these grammar errors that make no sense. you know, Netflix is going to take the time to create a message that's going to be done well, right? So here's a great little link, and I'm going to just keep this up here for a bit, but teach yourself how to detect phishing emails. So phishing quiz with google.com is a great site, and it's going to ask you when you go to that site, it's going to ask you to just pop up, you know, enter a name of any kind. Don't use your name, but use any name like John Doe, J Doe at someplace.com. It's going to ask you for your name and an email. And it's going to go through a bunch of little tests with you. And it's going to say, hey, here's an email. What do you think is wrong? And just go through it and teach yourself about how to try to detect some phishing emails that come in. So it's a great little way to do it. You know, you should do it. You know, give it to your kids, give it to your, you know, pass it around in your company. It's a fantastic little way of teaching yourself how to detect phishing emails. So I'll leave it there for just a little bit longer before I go to the next slide. So you can write it down. And if you miss this, you know, maybe you know, Innovation Guelph can maybe just remind you if you forgot what it was. We'll be able to help you out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just get in touch with us and I can send any recordings or links or anything. I did put that phishing quiz link in the chat, so feel free to open that up in your browser.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move along. Got about 15 minutes left. So the second I want to talk about is credentials theft. So what you need to do is, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more, enforce your password length and requirements, complexity. If you have the ability to do that on your system, on your computer networks for your business, make sure you take advantage of those settings within the system to enforce length requirements and complexity. If you don't have that, you know, try to do it yourself. Implement two-factor authentication wherever possible. Office 365 now has this feature, and I'm very sure it's free. There are other paid versions of two-factor authentication that are more unifying, so that you can use it for a lot of things. Like, for example, our own company, we use two-factor authentication for absolutely everything that can be used with two-factor authentication. So if anybody does get a hold of your credentials, now they're going to be challenged with some kind of text message or you know, a special number. Here, this is an older what they call a secure ID crypto key. We used to use these, but nowadays the function of this has now been adapted into your smartphone. So you can actually just get some applications that will do this for you. And these were very expensive systems in the past. Nowadays, two-factor authentication is more of a monthly service, and you know, I think in the long run, it's actually cheaper to do it that way. But 2FA is I highly recommend it. Put it on your Office 365. I know it's a little bit of a pain, but please, you should do that. I highly recommend a password management system, and so do a lot of other security professionals. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. Train your users to know how to avoid phishing emails. Like that, that's the #1 way that things happen these days. So that little website that I gave you, train yourselves on that. And always update your browser and your systems with patch updates. But I want to take a little path down this way a little bit and talk about passwords, because I think it's very important. Common mistakes about passwords. They're too short, too common, too old. They're very easy to guess. default passwords. You've never changed them on your home router, for example, or your wireless gateways. You're reusing passwords. You're storing them, like on sticky notes on your monitor. You know, we see that sometimes. We work with a lot of clients, a lot of companies, thousands of desktops. Sometimes we come across this, and you know, we have to tell people, don't do that. That's a bad place to put a password. You have unsecured devices, for example, like cameras. Like some of these camera systems that are out there, horribly insecure, right? And you share passwords. Just don't do that. That's probably the worst thing to do too. So these are common mistakes that have happened. How can you protect yourself? I think this is the best tip I've ever heard. And it's to use, for password, use sentences and quotes. So if you think about it, a sentence has all the great features of a great password, right? Uppercase, lowercase, spaces, punctuation, and it's long, right? You can make long passwords that are very memorable. You know, think of a great, you know, quote or something you would tell your kids all the time. You know, clean up after yourself or whatever. You just have some sentence that you keep in your head. You can use those as a great password. Yeah, that's a very nice way to do it. Using password managers to help you remember all these passwords. And one of the big things that we constantly tell people is to have unique passwords for all the different things you do, like Facebook or Instagram, your bank, your this, whatever. Have unique passwords. Don't use the same password all the way. That's sharing passwords or reusing passwords. You don't want to do that. Having a password manager helps you remember these unique passwords for all the different sites. Here's another great little website called Password Meter. Now, you don't have to put your password in there, but just to kind of get an idea of what a nice password, what a good password would be like. You can go there, just type in a password of some kind, and it'll give you a good score and tell you how good it is that you can use as a password. So just a nice little place to go in there, just to kind of get an idea how to make good passwords. And also, I was bringing this up before. This is a great little site, haveibeenpwned.com. I know it's this weird way of spelling, but this is a great website. What you do is you put your email address in the site, and it'll tell you if your password has been involved, if your email address has been involved in any breach, any major breach that this site is looking up or investigating. So if you put your email address in there, and it'll show you, yeah, your email address was caught up in the LinkedIn breach or the Dropbox breach, and you know, then you'll say, oh boy, I better go change my password for Dropbox, or I should just change my password for everything, which is a better idea. But another nice little place that you can go to just to see if your password's been stolen. I'm going to give you the toothbrush test. Does your password pass the toothbrush test? Choose a good password. Choose it's like choosing a good toothbrush. Don't share it. Replace it often, and don't recycle an old one. It's the same like your passwords. You want to choose a good one. Don't share it. Replace it often, and don't recycle it. Just like, you know, you don't want to do the same thing with a toothbrush. So that's a good little way to think about your passwords. The third one is ransomware. If you ever got a ransomware virus, this is a scary screen that you'll see on your computer. So this is a screen that the hacker will put up on your computer, and basically your important files are encrypted, everything. Can I recover my files? Sure, we can recover your files, but you're gonna have to pay, right? And you only have certain time left. You have 2 days, and if you don't, in 6 days, everything is gonna be lost. And they say to send $300 worth of Bitcoin. I mean, This is a small one, right? $300 nowadays in some of these attacks. I don't think I've ever seen that have been reported a CryptoLocker virus for $300 these days. It's often been a heck of a lot more. So again, how do you protect yourself from that? Goes back to training your users and training yourselves against phishing emails. Protecting your credentials, like we said, don't share your passwords. Use two-factor authentication, all that sort of stuff. Applying security patches. A lot of these viruses and these CryptoLocker viruses and malware are exploiting vulnerabilities that you have not patched yet. Always ensure that backups are running successfully. And then always ensure that you take those backups off site. That's very key, very, very key. IT best practices is that you're going to have an on-site backup that is doing something what we used to call grandfather, father, son. So you have hourly backups, and then daily backups, and then weekly backups, and then monthly backups, and then annual backups, all on site. And then you also take these backups off site, either by, the best way to do it is an automated means, because most people, the old way of taking tapes off site, people take tapes or hard drives, they leave it in their car, the car bakes in the heat or freezes, or they drop the hard drive and it shatters the drive. So, using an automated means of offsite backups, always the best way to do it. If possible, don't pay for the ransom. That's the thing that the NSA keeps on saying, and government people keep saying. Do not pay for ransom. Try to recover your files other ways. Sometimes you have no choice. Going to give you a few more bonus tips here. Split your personal and business accounts, right? So if you have a social media, if you have Facebook, make sure your Facebook for your business is different from your Facebook for your personal. Don't keep them the same. When you're on Facebook, don't reveal things like, hey, I'm on vacation, or don't put on your home address, your financial information, your phone number. Use the privacy settings to control those things. Use a different password for your social media accounts, right? Instagram's different from Facebook. I'm always wary about Facebook and how it wants to control all the passwords for everything that's out there. And I say, no. You're getting one of your own, and that's it. I mean, these days, Facebook for me is something I'm trying not to use at all, but it's something that you have to account for sometimes. And remember that you got to log off when you're done. Now, if you have e-commerce systems, it's a little more involved. You want to make sure that you're using encryption to protect yourselves. And again, having your online store to have, you should have updates being done, automated, having people taking care of these things, having maybe a hosted service or somebody like a managed security service provider to maintain these things. All software has bugs. So you got to keep on testing these systems against common vulnerabilities, and you got to test it often. Like once you do a vulnerability test, it's only good at that point in time. Next month it could be completely different. So you have to constantly test these things out. People are kind of surprised when they see this slide. How likely is it that you're going to be affected or compromised by an attack? In this defense report, in 2020 so far, 80% of companies have already been breached, right? And it's just crazy. It's just a crazy number. And you can see, also put another little chart there about the most breached companies or most breached countries that are out there. And Canada ranks pretty high up there. That's pretty sad. It just means that we have to do a better job collectively at dealing with breaches and preventing them, adding those layers of security, doing a better job with two-factor authentication, all those things I've been listing. I'm going to try to speed it up here a little bit. So it's just a little, some local breaches that have happened, some things that have happened right here in our own backyard. The big one, I think it was just last year, Waterloo Brewing. They lost $2.1 million in a cyber attack, right? And tons of other ones, City of Stratford, City of Ottawa. Hospitals, you know, the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, there's the Western University, lots of companies. There's more that haven't disclosed it. How do I start protecting my business? Well, know the value of your data. Like, what data is crucial to run your business, and protect that. Make sure the layers are around that. Get a risk assessment done. You know, what kind of risks are exposed, or is my data exposed to? How well is my system put together? Making sure your systems are backed up and monitored, and patches are being updated all the time. I go back to cyber awareness, cybersecurity training. Train your team to avoid those threats. How can my business operate without the data systems? And don't forget the basics, like password policies and segregation of roles, auditing, regular system patching, and things like that. So here's just a quick list of some things that you should be doing. Have an incident response plan. I won't read them all out, but there's a ton of things in there. I've been kind of giving you these lists as I go. You know, securing your website, securing portable media, implement access controls. A lot of these things are little buzzwords here, like perimeter defenses. It's just a fancy word of saying your firewall in ways, right? So just these are the kind of the basic things that you need to do to protect your own business. So how can we help? We have our own cybersecurity specialists that can monitor your systems 24/7, following the sun. So, you know, as the night progresses, we switch to other offices around the world to watch your systems at all times during the day. We have predictable investments so that you know what you got to pay for and how we secure your systems. It's very simple and straightforward. We have additional features if you need them, like if you have more e-commerce sort of things, we have ways to protect those things. And our systems are also there to protect you. We use artificial intelligence as well as human-powered threat hunting. There are people looking after your systems. We try to detect a breach in 10 minutes or less. That's kind of the goal, right? So if we can detect that, we can take steps to mitigate those issues. So it's something that we can be doing for you. So just a quick thing here, we use next generation antivirus, and there's just a quick price there, just kind of give you an idea. So we are a managed security service provider that can help you. And also we also can do some vulnerability risk assessments for your system as well. So who are we exactly? I mentioned a little bit. We were incorporated in 2008 under Reis Information Systems, but I got sick of writing that too much because it's too long. So that's not the real reason, but I like to say it. It's Reis Informatica now. We started as a managed services company, and we still are, and we are also a managed security services company. Cybersecurity has been baked into our DNA since day one. I've done a lot of security work before I even started Reis, and everything that we do has a lot of security baked into it. We have 3 offices around the world. Here in Kitchener, near the Huron Business Park, in the Huron Business Park, if you know where that is, where Bud Park, generally where Bud Park is. We have an office in Lisbon and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. We specialize in managed security, managed services, and cloud infrastructure. And the reason why we exist is to allow companies to focus on their business success while we handle your IT, everyday IT needs. So we have a little offer for Innovation Guelph clients. If you wish to know more about how to protect your own business, you can email info@innovationguelph.ca, and they can point you in the right direction on how you can go a little further with this. So I think that's it for my presentation. So I think we can open it up to the floor, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those questions for you. So that's it for me.
Sure. That's great. Thanks, Enrique. I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for being on the call for the hour. Hopefully you guys got to take away some good tips to protect your business and your own personal computers at home, and find new passwords and test out your passwords. I took a peek at those websites, Henrique, when we're talking, and I tested some things out. So those are really useful websites for sure.